Guys who gave the crazy girl a chance. What happened? It's not that I gave her a chance really. A person like that. It's more like it just happens to you. They're such a good manipulator that you don't really have a say in what is happening because you don't have an innate skillet to defend against behavior like that. But what happened is long-lasting trauma, chronic anxiety, always being afraid of being punished for doing something wrong, and the inability to tolerate any caffeine. Wreaked my nerves. I was fine before all that happened, but as they say, it indeed was the best sex ever. Not even close to worth it. We had tickets to see Godspeed You Black Emperor, hanging out before the set, joking around. Everything was great. She says to me, "You are perfect." I casually respond, "Not perfect. Remember you were mad that I left the seat up. Haha hey. I'll go get us some drinks. Come back carrying the glasses. She's covered in blood. She'd been cutting herself on the dance floor. I'm sorry I got mad at you about the toilet seat. I'm punishing myself, so I'll never say it again." In my opinion, it was not a proportional response, and I did not see her again after that. Broke up as I couldn't even get a minute to myself, constantly monitoring everything I was doing day and night. She then stalked me for a year outside my house. Sent endless messages and nudes of herself, even going so far as to fabricate a story that we were siblings that got separated after we were orphaned. My birth parents are still alive and well and loved, so no idea where she got that from. It came to an end after a family member found out about it and reported it to her civil service solicitor, telling her to back off and put a restraining order on her. I knew she was a little out there, but hey, my city is known for that. Before sleeping together, we had a very clear and well-articulated discussion about expectations and whatnot. We both said we didn't want to rush into anything. After 3 dates, she was really off-put that I didn't want to fully commit myself emotionally to her, despite me telling her why I was interested in her and that I wanted to pursue her. The barrage of texts I got the next day was unhinged. I ended up having to block her everywhere because she went full tilt whack job. Met a girl while working on a cruise ship, birds of a feather. I suppose we found a place together after our contract was up 6 months. And as it turns out, she was a raging alcoholic. The final straw was when I came back home to her drunk and yelling racial slurs at me while throwing kitchenware at me. I left for the night before the knife drawer got opened and received 180 ISH drunk texts. Police didn't do much, so I got an EPO and was escorted back into the apartment to grab my stuff while she begged and pleaded for me to stay with her. She was bipolar and refused to get help. She had some unresolved trauma from her childhood that after 3 years I only have the faintest idea of what it was truly. She tried to kill herself in front of me. If she felt she let me down, she'd self-harm her thighs and then cry. And when I saw that, I think my biggest regret is not telling her parents just how unwell she was. The sex was bomb. I stayed way longer than I should have. Like she'd let me eat her ass and then ride me like she was trying to rip my dick off. It was great. Saying that I hate her. I just left. Next day I find out that this chick was using oxys. And that was it for me to call it quits. A bunch more shit happened. Lol, she was hot, but shit was not worth it. In our 3-week relationship, she cheated on me with 2 guys. I found out on Christmas Day and dumped her. She became rageful that I broke up with her, especially on Christmas Day. We were teenagers. Years later, in our mid-20s, we bumped into each other outside behind a club where everyone was taking a break or smoking. She smoked and took her lit cigarette directly to the back of my neck and burned me with it while laughing. I don't know what's happened to her since, but she was a very disturbed teen and then adult. In fairness, my head wasn't in the right place either. We dated for 8 years with nothing being amazing, decided to get married, divorced within 2. During our marriage, she had sex with me when I was unconscious to get pregnant. She refuses to co-parent and is wildly jealous of the connect I have with my 3-year-old son. Legally, we are supposed to have 50-50, but it is more like 80-20 for me. She puts dick above her son. I learned a lot of lessons. The only good out of our relationship is my son. Here goes. I met her while she was working at a bar. We fucked on our first date. She was above my league in looks. A month later, she told me she was pregnant. Took her to the doctor. Found out she was almost 3 months pregnant, so it wasn't mine. She told me she was on the pill liar. After going through the pregnancy, she gave away her baby for adoption. Cut to 2 years later, I left her with her criminal family and told them they were grandparents. Would do it all again. Best sex ever. She told me she stopped cutting herself in her teens. She never stopped. Siv high points, massive low points. Tried to break it off her. She wouldn't let me go. She broke it off with me. Tried to leave in peace. She'd call me with unknown numbers and never let me go too far. Ended up having to block her number and find a new apartment. Only then was I able to live in peace again. Sex was phenomenal. 10 destruction to my own mental state. Absolutely not worth it. We got married, had a kid, and moved houses. She self-medicated with marijuana for her anxiety, then attacked me and a friend using a razor blade. We divorced. I got custody. She moved away, and she got married again. She moved back with husband, sued me for custody, got custody, tried homeschooling, and then attacked new husband one night. They got divorced. I got custody back. Then she kidnapped both kids and drove to Mexico, and was later arrested coming back across the border. Tarda. She was one of my best friends growing up. We were never apart. We reconnected recently after my divorce. I knew she'd had a rough life and mental problems, but not how bad it actually was. We dated very briefly. I think both looking for that Disney storybook romance. But we're just fundamentally incompatible and agreed we can't be a thing. We're like family now. We can call each other with anything and it's okay. Sometimes it's good to have the crazy in your corner. I eventually had to leave because it was too much, but it took me 1 year to figure out how to do it without her committing suicide. She attempted it before I met her. I didn't know for some time. I'm glad that I could at least convince her to exercise and go to therapy. She got better, more mature and more confident being with me. So even though I left her, she was way better than when I met her. It was hard when I told her it was over, but eventually she moved on. Had a weird attack. Suddenly Say wrote me accusing me of abusing her and smashing her child. Started insulting a Tunis friend I had and not she was German and didn't even spoke my language. Turns out she had multiple personality disorder and had a breakdown that day. She doesn't even had children. And we were perfectly normal till that day. Maybe because of shame or IDK. But after explaining shortly after what actually happened, she stopped talking me completely. We were engaged to be married. I found a journal chronicling her exploits with 30 Judes over our decade-long relationship. She was on hardcore drugs. She had been seeing multiple therapists on her mom's dime, so her mom knew all of this and never thought to say anything to me. And she was a master manipulator and liar. It all revealed over the next month after the breakup that she was legit leading a double life. Lol. Great question. My mum convinced me that it wasn't my business to treat the girl's condition. So I told the girl that I would stick with her as long as she did therapy. She did. We got married and had 30 beautiful years together. She left me less than a year ago. She said that she felt too dependent on me, as if I were her father. I honestly feel good for her, but I miss her a lot. I have been dating other women, but nothing feels comparable. Decent sex. Then she said I should be her stay-at-home husband and raise the kids she had. NGL. For where I was in life at that point, I entertained the idea for a split second, but ultimately said no. After that night, she found my plug and bought me a ½ ounce to try and win me back. Then I showed up at the bar we both frequented a month later with my now wife. She glared daggers all night and we avoided her like the plague. It was a thing. I'll buck the trend and say the sex was better than average, but not mind-blowing. Her interest in bringing other women into the fold is what really sold it to me. As for what happened, we tried to make it work over a couple years, but it fell apart when she made a string of rape accusations against me that were easily disproved. Prot it when trying to frame someone. Don't claim it happened when your target is at work on camera the whole time. To doing sexual stuff on camera or she'd kill herself. Later pressured me into being her cheating partner. And when I said no and cut her out of my life, she just assumed that I'd committed suicide over her. She's now a he and does pole dancing. Used to post nudes on an Asian subreddit. It fits the HRT. or her just aging badly. But whatever looks pretty awful. I guess the outside matches the inside now. She locked me into her apartment because I kept leaving and wouldn't accept work as a reason for leaving every day. Complained I prioritized my children over her. We broke up. She messaged me months later because she saw a girl in a pic on my Insta and said I was cheating on her. She still massages me every now and then. Years later, to ask me not to post things about my life on social media because it makes her angry. Dated a girl with BPD for a couple of months. I was curious about her conditions. And I also tried to not stigmatize her. Long story short, I broke up after 2 months after her second psychotic crisis. She tried to cut herself in front of me just to scare me, not to commit suicide. Also, we used to have argument for almost everything at certain point due to the fact that was impossible to match her relationship standards. Lived in my house without contributing anything for 6 months. She quit her job soon after she moved in. She called the cops on me when I broke up with her and tried to get me arrested. Thankfully, she was hammered when the police arrived, so they didn't believe her story. Still took another year and thousands of dollars to get her out of my life. She destroyed most of my things and trashed my house before she left. A year later, and she left me through a text message. She always ran away from every problem or inconvenience that she faced for some reason. I believed how when she promised she wouldn't do it to me. She was also obsessed with being a Discord more Twitch streamer. Towards the end, it seemed like that always took priority over our relationship.